Welcome to this session on using a law curve. So far we've created a slider that is controlling the t-value. But a slider gives you a variable that is a constant value. Therefore, the arcs are all the same. They all have the same start point and the same end point. So what if you could start and end the arcs at different points so that you might create a more interesting facade? What if you could create a slider that did not provide a constant variable, but rather a list or array of related values or variables? So that's the purpose of a law curve. A law curve actually graphs the values, on a curved graph. So I'm going to go back to my node types, and under the utility nodes, you'll find the law curve node. And I'm going to drag and drop that onto my graph here. And if you click on the node, you'll see it actually creates a graph, has an X and a Y axis. So X is basically the location, and the Y is going to be the actual value that gets assigned as the variable. So we're going to double click on this to open its properties, and let's go ahead and set up some of these values. Now, the first value here is the independent variable. So what this is really setting up is how many values are going to be generated. So we're using a series function here. It's going to start at 0. It's going to go to a limit of 10, and it is going to increment at 1. And that defines the values along the bottom of the graph, along the X value of the graph. And so it's going to go from 0 to 10. So you're going to actually have 11 values that get generated, 11 Y values. And we could change this number if we wanted, for instance, to match exactly the number of floors that we have here. So we have 8 arcs, and we could then put in a limit of 7, and that would generate 8 values there. I'm going to simply leave it at 10. It means we'll run out of values, or we won't use all the values, but if we make the building taller, then we'll have some additional values to use. The number of controls is simply the number of points along the graph that will control the curve, and so I'll go ahead and leave that at 5. Order is simply the order of the curve. I'm going to leave that at 4. The Y minimum is simply, just like on our slider, it's the start point of the range of values along the Y axis. So because we're really defining a t value, that will be 0. Our max will be 0.5, just as it was on our t value slider. Our X grid spacing will be 0.05. The spacing between those two values, 0 and 0.5, and our Y grid spacing will be 1. It's typically 1 that aligns with our interval there. And then it sets up some default control points. So we're going to come back to the node on the graph. I'm actually going to rename this as law curve t value. And if I open that up, you can see now here's our interval along our y-axis. So I could actually create a curve here. I simply drag the points in some way along the graph there. And now all I need to do is link that back to the t-value used for my atrium coordinate system points. So I'm going to select the wire that's attached to the t-value. I'm going to disconnect this wire from t-value, which was the slider we created. Just to see if you see, I still have the wire on the end of my cursor, and I'll come to my law curve outputs and select the dependent variable. And we'll see now it's changing the location of those points. I'm going to do the same with the other one. We'll disconnect that wire from the t-value, and I'm going to connect it to the dependent variable. Now if you remember, this one we have to subtract from 1. So we'll say 1 minus. And now we get a more interesting facade, and it's a double curved surface. And I could open up my law curve and simply adjust that curve as a way to manipulate that facade. I can also type values at the top of the graph if I want to be more exact. But once I have a curve that I like, I'm going to come over to Transactions and Record. Now that we've made some changes, again, I might want to come and use the Update Model so that it rebuilds the slab and the wall at our lobby. Let's just take a look. Yeah, and there's the wall underneath there. Now in the next session, we'll actually look at creating different what-if scenarios. In other words, making changes to the model and then saving those as transactions so that you can easily switch back and forth between a couple of different options, and then we'll choose one to move forward.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.